This is Todd Champion, and I'm on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve BOWTIE Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card, Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at stevebowtiebryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Hey, this is Jimmy from the Live and in Color with Wolfie D and Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. Would you like to also make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere, and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. And that's how you're hearing this right now. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, it's made the job of producing multiple podcasts so much easier. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast, and here I am, as always, with my brother from the same father and mother, Jared, the Plastic Sheik Street. What's up, Sheik? How you doing, brother?
I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
Man, I'm just doing the thing here. Got a couple days off with the wife. We're gonna try to do some kind of adventure around the house, maybe clean it or do some housework.
Is it one of those old school books, choose your own adventure kind of thing?
No, this is it. Well, yeah, she's choosing my adventure.
Yeah. See? Yeah. She'll flip the page and she's like, page 22 says Jimmy cleans out the garage or something.
Exactly. And that is what I do. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, no, we're just enjoying the long weekend and trying to get some things done around the house. So you know how it is, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but man, got a cool show today. Definitely excited about this one. Todd Champion, very cool, man.
Yeah, man, he's one of those guys that's been around the block and he's got a lot on his resume, and it's gonna be interesting to hear some stories from him.
Oh yeah, for sure. What's your first memory of Todd Champion?
My first good memory is probably the Patriots, I think.
Yeah.
But then thinking back after I realized, the same person, you think back of other times you saw him and everything like that. But Probably in the Patriots or whatever, like that thing.
Yeah, I think that was like his time of standing out a little bit. But I think, I remember him working as kind of what Tommy and David did on the Crockett shows. He would kind of be like the bigger underneath guy. But man, I don't know. He's got a cool career. He played in the NFL, Hollywood. I mean, he's done a little bit of everything. So,
Yeah, man. If you haven't seen him in some aspect, it's probably your fault.
Right. Right. Yeah. California guy, born in North Carolina, ended up in California, ended up playing the NFL and
played college ball in Utah State.
Yeah.
Utah State,
yeah. Very cool, man. So I'm very excited to have him on. Definitely. We had some plans for one show, but then this show turned into what it turned into, and I'm actually happier that it did. So we're good. Yeah.
Sometimes things not going as planned can work out pretty good.
Right, exactly. But also, we've also been having some great shows. One of the, of course, we've had Tommy, David, Pat, Rick, all these guys. But then we also just did to start the year off, we did our New Year's resolutions for pro wrestling, and everybody seemed to like that. We brought some of our buddies on with their resolutions. Past guests and friends of the show and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it was received well, I believe. So
I'm glad they still want to listen to us if we didn't have somebody on with us.
A guest, yeah, that's the trick, right? Do you lean so heavy into guests that you always have to have one, or but I don't know.
Hopefully they like us enough to tune in even without a guest. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I did spice it up with our buddies, wishes and hopes for the year. So, there's a little bit of guest action on that show. It's just mostly you and I, though, which is the old school way, right? So.
Going old school.
Yeah, but definitely start of a new year. Hopefully everybody had, a fun New Year's Eve and has now ended up figuring out, 2024. We don't even have to write it on checks anymore, right? We just have to kind of remember.
What's writing a check?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I know. That's the old school way, though, right? So maybe. If we really like the old school, maybe we need to start writing checks again, Jared. I'm just, yeah.
No thanks.
No thanks. How things going your way, man?
Oh, they're good. They're good. It's cold, but
right.
It's only going to get a little colder over the next few days. I mean,
yeah.
It's one of those things that after you get a little older, unless you just really love the cold, I don't know how anybody would want to live too far north, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other reason not to move to the north, right? All of our northern listeners, we thank you all. Y'all are awesome. Definitely appreciate you. But when it comes down to it, y'all can keep the cold up there.
Keep the cold, yeah.
Yeah, well, I say let's go ahead and get Todd on. What do you think, man?
Absolutely, man. I'm excited.
All right, sounds good. We'll be right back after these messages with Todd Champion on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
This is Kroll, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling with Jimmy Street and Jarrett the Plastic Sheik. Be sure to like, subscribe, and view all of our USWO and Saw Wrestling content at Nashville Wrestling Network, exclusively on YouTube.
All right, we are back with more from the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast, and we've got another great one, Jared. I don't know how to say it other than just we've got an excellent guest today, man.
I mean, no better words to say. It's an honor to have this gentleman on with us, and I'd say we get it going.
All right. Well, no better time than when you have the champion here, a.k.a. Todd Champion. Welcome to the show, Todd. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, man.
Gotcha.
Excited to be talking to you, brother. That's what we're fired up about. So,
well, I appreciate somebody remembers me.
Of course. Well, there's more than you would. There's quite a few of us out here, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, we always start every show off with a very difficult question because that's just how we do things. It's the Plastic Sheik's favorite question. Sheik, take it away.
All right, Todd. So this question right here is going to let kind of the fans know maybe who you were a fan of or who you enjoyed watching. But if you had like 4 or 5 wrestlers that were on your like Mount Rushmore of wrestling, who would that be?
Mount Rushmore wrestling. There's a lot of dudes out there that could be on that. But you said only got 5?
Yeah, you can have 6 if you need it. But
yeah, whatever you need, man.
Probably Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say Arn Anderson.
Oh man, love it.
I love it.
Double A is one of my favorite of all time. So
yeah, I love Arn to death, and that's a funny dude too.
Yeah.
And then I would probably say Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I'm using these guys because these are guys I worked with.
Yeah.
And I know there's others in different companies, but these are the guys that I worked with. Probably I would say Terry Gordy.
Oh yeah, a bruiser. I love it.
Yeah, Terry and I were tag team partners in Japan.
Right.
And
right. Yeah.
That's where I really got to know him, and super dude, just a great guy. Probably Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Man, a great list. Yeah, so far.
And then probably last but not least would probably be Nelson Royal.
Oh man. Yeah. See, now that's where I live. I live in Mooresville, the home of Nelson. Yeah. So I know you're very familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. My son lives in Mooresville. And I went back there when he got married, and I hadn't been back. So then I went by the Western store there to see him. I mean, his wife, he's passed away.
Right.
But those were the good old days when we were training there, and I was his first student.
Yeah,
at wrestling school. Yeah,
because you were kind of the first one to show up on TV. I remember that, and then there was like a whole bunch of other guys rolling in, And
it was interesting because I was fresh out of football.
Yeah, and
I went back to North Carolina to visit my grandparents who were still alive. They lived in Kannapolis in China Grove.
Oh yeah,
and that's where I lived in China Grove till I was 12.
Okay.
So anyway, went back there, and I went into a sporting goods store, and this guy, friend of mine, owns a sporting goods store, and he goes, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Well, I'm just going to take a year off." And I've been playing football since I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm just going to take a break, maybe travel, do some just stuff I haven't been able to do because my life was consumed with sports, for such a long time.
Yeah.
And I said, he said, "You ought to get into professional wrestling." I said, "No, I'm not doing that stuff." And I hadn't paid because I was living in California at the time. So wrestling was more regional. So living in LA, there's so much going on in LA. That's just another thing,
Right.
So I didn't really pay that much attention. And he said, he kept pestering me. I said, "Okay, then what do you got to do? I don't know anybody." He goes, "I know a guy named Nelson Royal, a good friend of mine. You need to go talk to him." And I said, "Well, shoot, I got a week. I could go talk to him. And if if I don't think that's something I'm going to do, I'll just go back to California." And started talking to Nelson. And the more we talked, the more intrigued I got. And he pulled me in his office at the Western store and sat me down, kind of told me a little bit about the business. And I said, "Well, let's try it. I got nothing to lose."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, I got a ring in a barn." This was before they had the heat put in and everything. He says, "I got this ring in a barn, and just come here and work out, and we'll work out. And then if I think, you got the goods, we'll take the next step. I'll call Dusty."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay." And that's where it all started. It all started right there. Yeah.
That's awesome. So just to be clear, you weren't really a big fan of wrestling, or you weren't really you didn't know much about it, kind of? Is that the deal?
I knew, living in, and I heard people talk about it and stuff, but it just wasn't I was so into football. That was the only thing I knew. I mean, it was football or bust, so wrestling was, something that I knew was going on, and I'd hear names and, okay, but it wasn't on my radar.
Right.
And it didn't really get on my radar till that fateful day when I met Nelson Royal. And that's where it all changed.
You know, and it's so funny. I've told the last few people that we've talked to, especially the guys trained by Nelson. We had Tommy Angel, David Isley, several different guys. Your name would come up. And I've always said this, that I think you are one of those wrestlers that if you took like let's say a really good artistic child, like maybe 12 or 13 years old, you know, they can really draw really well. And I'm just like, okay, I want you to draw what you think of as a pro wrestler. Like, what would they look like? And I've said this several times, and the listeners can attest. You know, I've said Todd Champion is one of those guys that if you were to draw a pro wrestler, you know, you could easily get Ox Baker, but you could also easily get Sid. You know what I mean? Or somebody like that. But I think you're one of those dudes, man. You're definitely one of those guys. So
it's funny because I've always been athletic as a kid. I just if it was round, I could do it. I played baseball, I played basketball, I played football, 3-sport guy for a lot of years. It was just anything round, you know, racquetball. I was good at that, you know, and I was 6'5" at the time, and when I was playing football, I was 6'5", about 280, 290.
Yeah.
And I ran a 4.7 40 at 290 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Bench 5'10", and as a junior in college when nobody was benching 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Nobody at Utah State has ever lifted that much.
Yeah.
And I was just going into my junior year from being a sophomore. So I've always kind of had that, you know, sometimes you get gifted things that you don't have to work hard at. You know, now I worked hard at my craft and what I did in sports, but it was something I enjoyed doing, and because I was good at it, it made me enjoy it even more, you know?
Yeah, no question.
So, Todd, talk to us a little about your NFL days and your time in football like that.
Okay. Well, you know, I was recruited. I don't know if you remember a guy named, when I was in high school, I moved to California when I was 14 years old to Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
And I was just I was a redneck, and I was in California. Figure that one out. You know,
Beverly
the only
Hillbillies.
yeah, basically. But we weren't living in Beverly Hills. So
right.
But the way I made friends was on the football field, and that was kind of my social skill. I didn't know anybody, but I knew how good I was in football, and I knew if I excelled well in football, I'd make friends, and that's how I did it. And, you know, going into my senior year, I was being recruited pretty heavily on the West Coast. A few teams on the East Coast. Carolina recruited me a little bit, Virginia, and then, of course, Cal and UCLA, people like that on the West Coast.
Right.
And then a guy walked in the office one day, and his name was, I don't know if you've heard of this guy. You may not, but I'll be shocked if you haven't. Rod Marinelli.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Rod Marinelli was my strength coach and line coach at Utah State.
Okay.
Oh.
He recruited me out of high school, and he was actually scouting somebody else and saw me on tape and said, "Who is that guy?"
Yeah.
And that's how. And then, you know, I went up on a visit up there and fell in love with Utah. I just, you know, I was just up there last year for homecoming. I take a week and I go up there and go in the mountains and do all the fun stuff for the game.
Very cool.
And so he recruited me out of high school, and he was the primary. Let's just say it this way: he out recruited the bigger schools. I mean, he was there when it was time for me to go to lunch. He made sure he was there first, and he would take me off campus to go to lunch, so nobody else could talk to me. That was pretty smart.
That is.
Yeah. So he'd take me wherever I wanted to go, and then just fill me full of food, you know, and then take me back. And by that time, all the scouts had left because they got tired of waiting on. So anyway, you know, I signed my letter of intent with Utah State, and Cal was after me pretty heavy. They called me after the fact and said, you know, if you ever change your mind, you got a full ride here. And I said, okay, well, thank you. At least I got some fallback plans just in case. You never know. Yeah. But anyway, went up there and just fell in love with Utah State and had a good career up there and enjoyed my time. 83, I was a senior and didn't get drafted, but I was a free agent and went to the Rams and did really well there in 84, 85, and then got traded to San Francisco and tore my hamstring so bad I couldn't walk. And I was right before, and I was already in the 2 deep rotation. and I hadn't even practiced yet.
It's that 300-pound 4.740.
Well,
that's what.
Yeah, it was funny because I was such a gym guy, running, lifting, and I think I overtrained because I went on the beach at Half Moon Bay in San Francisco, and put army boots on, and I'd run in the sand.
Gotcha.
And so we had one of the I can't remember his name now. One of the wide receivers says, "Hey, I'm going to go jogging on the sand." Big mistake running with a wide receiver. That's like so anyway, I did. I went with him. And I was keeping up with him, and then all of a sudden he just started pulling away and pulling away and pulling away. Next thing I know, he looks like a little ant down there. And I'm just barely getting there, and he's coming the opposite direction, Yeah. But I think I overtrained, and then I went to do my speed work that afternoon, and I was out there doing speed work, and man, I was running some 40s and things, and I just took that big stride, and I heard this big pop. And I thought somebody shot me in the leg. That's how bad it was. And I fell on the ground, and I couldn't straighten my leg out. That hamstring had just, like a rubber band, just balled up, And so all summer it wouldn't heal. And we were getting close to fall camp and summer camp, and I wasn't healed. And it wasn't coming. And by the time camp started, I still wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And so they released me, and that was disheartening for me because I was already too deep. I was on the team. There was no question.
Yeah.
But I couldn't walk, couldn't run. I couldn't. It took over a year for that to heal. And that's when I went back to North Carolina. After that, I said, okay, I'm done. My body's telling me something here.
Yeah.
And that's when I went back to North Carolina, and the wrestling career started at that point.
Yeah. And so it's in 1986. You've been trained by Nelson. You're one of his first students. You've got, you're one of the first to TV as well. And it shows here your very first match. Was that with Ivan Koloff? Am I correct about that?
I was actually doing dark matches in between shows.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
And my name was still my real name.
Yeah.
And I'd go out and I'd have these really good matches, and the people were starting to get and I didn't, this is all still new to me. I'm still new to the business. I'm green. I don't know how it all works. I just show up and do my job. Right. So
yeah.
I get there. It's probably about the 5th or 6th dark match, 6 weeks into it. And Dusty goes, "Hey, Todd, come here. I want to talk to you." I'll never forget. It was in Greenville, South Carolina. And he pulls me in the shower, and he, and in typical Dusty fashion, he goes, "Come here, baby. I want to talk to you for a second."
Oh, you get extra points. That's for the impersonation.
Yeah, I go, "What's up, Dusty?" He goes, "I've been thinking long and hard about you." And I said, "Well, you going to fire me?" He goes, "No, babe, I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to change your name." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm going to change your name." He said, "I'm going to change your name to Todd Champion. It's got a nice ring to it."
Yeah.
And then he goes, "All them coats you wear to the ring with your last name on it, take them off. Put Todd Champion on there now." I said, "Okay."
That's awesome.
So anyway, that's how that name, Dusty created that name. Dusty was a good visionary, creative guy.
No doubt.
And he made a lot of guys' careers.
I see $1 million with you, champion.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you even funnier story. So my first match was against the Golden Terror. I didn't have a finishing move. And I said, "Dusty, I don't have a finishing move." He goes, "Do the backwards elbow." I went, "How do you do that?"
Yeah.
Then he was in the back room showing me, do it this way. Anyway, I figured it out while I had the match, and I had a really good first TV match, and kind of my career kind of went from there. After that, the matches got better. I got better as a wrestler, and one of the biggest, probably most exciting things, other than winning these titles, is I've probably been in the business maybe a year. And, I was always the first or second, third guy in the match, right? Always.
Right.
Every time. Mid-card or lower, because you had all these great guys, doing their thing and the angle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt.
So I called myself the curtain jerker, And so I walk in one day, it was a TV taping, and I'm looking at the sheet, seeing the order of the show and the matches, and I wasn't on the first, second, or third match or fourth match or anything. I looked down, I'm wrestling Ric Flair for the TV title. I about took a crap in my shorts when I saw that.
Oh, wow, man. Yeah.
I'd say so. Yeah.
And everybody in the locker room were going, just relax, just relax, just relax. I said, I don't know. I was nervous as you could be, sweating and all kinds of stuff before the match. And I'll never forget the header right before the match came on. It says champion versus champion. And I said, wow, So I went out there and went 25 minutes with Ric Flair in a main event match on television. And I think that was kind of the aha moment for me. I realized, shoot, I can do this and probably be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But I know, and when you're working with professionals, that's why I named Ric Flair as one of the Mount Rushmore guys, because he knew I was green. He knew I was nervous. He knew, I was still had this football mentality, and he just looked at me and goes, look, just relax, listen to me, you'll be fine. He said, oh, by the way, don't hurt me.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing, right? He's working 7 nights a week, so.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And so with a guy like that, you respect him so much and he did take care of me, and he was having me do things I didn't know I could do.
Yeah.
And that really built up my confidence. And
did you do the Beal? Did you do the Beal with him? Did you do the Beal with him where you threw him off?
No, he didn't do that one. No,
gotcha.
This was before that. This was before he was doing that. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Understand.
But I will tell you, he made me look like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And after the match, everybody came in the locker room and said, man, that was a hell of a match. And I said, well, all I did was listen to what he told me to do.
Keep your mouth shut and your ears open. That's
exactly
magic.
Right. And I think that was the key, when you're talking about, drawing a professional wrestler and this. If I didn't have the athletic ability, I don't think I could have pulled it off.
Yeah, that's understandable.
There's a lot of big guys. Yeah, there's a lot of big guys with good-looking bodies, but they can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
So, so there's a lot of, stuff out there. So my athletic ability is probably what carried me for 10 years.
Well, hey, man, I mean, you did it. So let me ask you, because, this podcast probably would not exist if it were not for Mid-Atlantic. We were born in southwestern Virginia near Bristol, Tennessee area, Tri-Cities. We're obviously big Mid-Atlantic fans, and that's what basically molded our fandom as a kid, Sure. And how was it working with the Crockett's?
I did. I mean, we weren't buddy or anything, but they really took me under their wing and kind of mentored me. And a Magnum TA was another one. He should have been on Rushmore too. Magnum and I got to be pretty good friends during that time. And he would see me and just smile and laugh, because he knew I was nervous half the time. Yeah. And, but he was such a nice guy. And we were in Charlotte for the gathering 2 years ago. I hadn't seen him in years, when he had his accident in his Porsche. We went out to dinner. We were 2 nights prior to that. We were out to dinner with each other.
Man.
And and then he was in the hospital, and it was pretty heartbreaking at that point in time.
Yeah, Magnum's doing that Power Town line with Greg Gagne and the guys from the action figure line, and so we got in kind of tight with the guy who owns the Power Town and started it, Steve Rosenthal. And we interviewed Steve, and we were like, okay, this is great. We've interviewed the guy who did the old Rimco wrestling action figures when we were kids. That's all we need. And at the end of the show, he's like, hey, man, would you guys like to have Magnum on? And we're like, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like to have Magnum on. And so we had Magnum on really early. I mean, honestly, like very early in this podcast. And it was like, hold on, is this the path we're taking now? Like, are we ready for this?
Right.
It's been.
Magnum was such a genuine, nice guy.
He is.
And you can tell, yeah.
There's probably not a mean bone in that guy's body. And I really believe if he hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been the next big thing. I think he could have been bigger than Hulk Hogan, to be honest.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I think so too, because he had a hairline. You know what I'm saying? Not to knock Hogan, but he had that look. Women loved him. You know what I'm saying? The women loved him. The men respected him.
Right.
And I think he would have been WWF champion. I don't think just the NWA champion. I think he would have ended up WWF champion for sure.
I think I really believe he would have had a long, illustrious career if he hadn't gotten that wreck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we did a whole thing earlier on, right around the time we had Magnum on. We made this little thing up about what if Sting went to the WWF and Ultimate Warrior went to Crockett. And, we basically found out that Ultimate Warrior probably wouldn't have lasted and Sting would have probably did really well. But part of the reason that Sting was able to be so successful so early was because Magnum's wreck, and there may not have been that spot to be the top dog had it not been for Magnum getting hurt, So,
Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, fate is a funny thing,
it really is.
You just never know. So, I every day, I see a lot of the guys now, and they're, and there's some of the guys are, a little beat up, and of course I am too. But my health I've been pretty lucky with my health, and I just got told Christmas Eve I'm going to be a grandfather again, so I'm pretty pumped up about that.
Congratulations!
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Congrats!
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So.
You don't look like a grandfather. Let's just say that. So you're doing all right.
I'm trying not to. But that day's coming. But I'm going to keep, going to the gym and working out and doing what I can do. And because I during my tenure with WCW, I owned a health club in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Okay.
Called Todd Champion. Todd Champion's All Pro Athletic Club, and DDP came and did autograph sessions, and guys, and had Jake the Snake, who lived in Lawrenceville. He was always working out, and he'd come in and he did some autograph sessions for me. So,
man,
I've been a gym rat for a long time.
I mean, you can tell, Todd, to be honest.
Yeah, no doubt.
But in WCW, I was up to like 310, I think.
Okay.
And now I'm a slim trim 275.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, there were pictures. I was looking through pictures of you just to make promotional images for the show coming up. And I was like, my God, this dude is as big as the Warlord here. Like, he is jacked, man.
And I wrestled the Warlord, too. Wrestled him and Barbarian and all those cats when we were all in NWA and wrestling in those outdoor football stadiums and all that, the high school gymnasiums. I mean, we did the loop, that's for sure.
Definitely.
So around this time after this, you went to Central States. Talk about that move a little bit.
Yeah, that was we were in the NWA was looking to expand, and at that time, territories were kind of going away little by little. They were selling out to the bigger promoters, and so Jim Crockett had worked a deal with Bob Geigel to come in and bring a team in to Kansas City, and we were baby faces and heels from my era and my guys, and come in there and work that territory.
Yeah.
And so we went out to Kansas City, and I hate to say it, but it didn't turn out like they thought.
Yeah.
It was probably, I'd already paid my dues, but I paid them more in Kansas City than I did anywhere.
Did you starve to death?
Well, I was under a guarantee. I said, I ain't going unless I know I'm making this much money.
Sure.
I'm not going to drive up to an arena and have 50 people there and make $10. I'm not doing it.
Right. That's brutal.
I'm a businessman too.
Yeah.
So they took a group of us, me, Sam Houston, Gene Ligon, Joel Deaton. I was, they tagged me up with DJ Peterson.
Okay. Yeah.
DJ looked just like Magnum.
Right. He did.
They could have been brothers.
Yeah,
but
they did.
Anyway, so we came in and worked that territory, and then once a month or twice a month, the big boy, I call the A-team, would fly in and do the big house shows or the big arenas, right?
Okay.
And that was fine, but when they'd leave, it would just go away, and we'd show up to towns, drive 300 miles and 100 people there, and nobody knew we were there.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew something was wrong. I told one of my guys driving home, I said, I don't know if Crockett's know it or not, doesn't know, but they're trying to sabotage this place.
Right.
They don't want us here. They don't want us here.
Yeah.
They don't want us here. And 6 months into it, I called Crockett and I called Dusty. I said, this, I told them what was going on and us going to these towns, not being promoted, and they agreed with me. And I said, I can't do this. I said, get me back to Carolinas as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And so that's basically, we went out there and we were Central States Tag Champions against Thunderfoots and all that. And it would have been a really good place to, young guys could come in and work a territory if they would have done it right. Well, with Dusty and Jim Crockett not being there to kind of oversee it and letting the other guy that they bought out oversee it, I think hurt us. It would have been a lot better if maybe Jim Crockett Jr. or Dusty would come in once a week and make sure everything was going the way it was planned.
Right.
But it would have went over. It really would, because
I believe it.
The first couple of weeks we were there and we did television, we packed out these little gymnasiums and places. And then, the television, could have been better. But looking back, is 2020. But, after 6 months of being there and through those winters are brutal up there to begin with. And so we're up there and it's ice cold and you're driving on the plains in Kansas and you don't see a tree, a house, or nothing for a couple hundred miles. And, so it was rough. It was rough,
right.
But we did it. And then once they kind of got wind of what's going on in Kansas City, they pulled us all back to the Carolinas.
Gotcha. And you come back to Mid-Atlantic and it's 87 and man, things are hot. Things are burning up. And you work some great guys. Now, these are some interesting names I want to bring up here real quick. So one of them is you work a tag team called The New Breed with your brother Chris Champion.
Yeah.
Now, talk about working him and especially having Chris Champion and Todd Champion. How was that?
Yeah, it was cool. Those were two. They were really nice guys.
Florida guys, yeah.
Yeah, they were Florida guys. I liked their gimmick a lot.
I did too. Yeah.
I think it was a good heel gimmick. So as far as wrestling, piece of cake.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them during that time.
I think Chris got hurt in a car accident, and Sean I don't know the full story about what happened to Sean Royal, but I know Chris came back and started doing like a more of a Karate Kid gimmick kind of deal. And I can't imagine him kicking you in the face being 6'6" like you are, but I know he was doing that to son. Like David Isley told a story about him busting his lip and stuff and Flair getting hot about it. But, I was just curious because especially you being Todd Champion and our listeners are a heavy base in Tennessee. We have a lot of listeners in Tennessee because I'm friends with a lot of the wrestlers from the outlaw scene in that area.
Yeah, my daughter just graduated from Tennessee last year.
Oh, cool. Congrats, man.
Yeah.
That's a very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So anyway, they're big Chris Champion fans because that's where Chris Champion wound up out there in Tennessee and stuff. And anyway, long story short, that's why I was curious about that. Another name I wanted to bring up, and we've never been able to ask any other people about this, but Jared and I, when we grew up, there was a movie that was out at the time when we were younger. We loved it. It was called Body Slam. It had Roddy Piper. It had the guy from A-Team in it. It had the Tonga
Barbarian.
Kid. Yeah, Barbarian. Yeah. And this guy I want to ask you about, T-Joe Khan. How was he?
Oh man, I love TJ. I call him TG, but he was another Minnesota guy.
Right. Right.
And came down there and did that gimmick, and he did it well. He was, I don't really, when I look back on my career, I didn't have a beef with anybody. I got along with it. I was just happy to be there,
Sure.
And so everybody I worked with, we always had good matches and just kind of did our thing. But yeah, T-Joe Khan was a super dude. He worked his gimmick really well, kind of like Nikita did. He worked his gimmick really well, and the one thing about you talk about giving me back my pro wrestling is believability.
Oh yeah,
and we were. I mean, it was really back then. You did not do somebody else's finishing move.
Right.
You did not do that. Everybody respected your finish. So if that was your finish for whatever, backwards elbow was my finish, and of course Ric Flair was the figure 4. Stings finish. You didn't use those as finishes. That was for those top guys to do.
Yeah.
And so believability was a big deal. If it didn't look right to you, it's probably not going to look right to the wrestling fans. So don't do it.
Yeah.
So that was the difference in the business back then. Is we took pride in doing things that you go, damn, I don't want that guy, drop kicking me or putting me in the figure four, because it was believability.
Yeah.
And so we were very, very protective of the business back then.
And I could go off for days about believability in the current product, and we'll just skip all that. But that is definitely a part of Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. Absolutely. Is the believability of it. So,
Absolutely. But anyway, it's it's kind of like football. Football's changed a little bit. It's gotten softer, I believe.
Yeah.
Back when I played, a crackback block was a good block. It wasn't illegal. Now it's
right.
Yeah.
You can't, we lower your head and run into somebody. That's targeting now. That gets you kicked out of the game.
Yeah.
So as the game progresses, fans progress, things change. I'm probably my own worst critic. I don't like watching myself. For some reason, I go, why did I do that? Why did I do this? I critique myself probably too much. But at the end of the day, today's product it's just a different world. It's just a different animal. There's more TV exposure now than ever. I'm kind of, like I said, a little bit of old school, but maybe I'm just out of touch. But we didn't do a lot of talking in the ring.
Right.
We told the story in the ring.
Yeah.
And that did our talking for, the interviews were kind of a side thing, the promos.
Sure.
But being in the ring and being able to tell a story and bring those crowds up and bring them down and bring them back, that's where the art form comes in. And that's what I was used to. We didn't have to tell a story before we got out there. We were telling the story in the ring, and people got it. People got it. They saw it, and they understood it. And so, that's the difference now,
Yeah. Yeah. It is. You're right. Sounds like there's a wrestling match at your house, Jared.
Yeah, there probably is downstairs. So around this time, Jim Crockett Promotions bought out Watts and UWF. What were your thoughts on that?
There again, people are, promoters are shrinking and regions and other promoters are expanding. And I think it was a good thing. Texas is a great area.
Sure. Yeah.
It's got a lot of pro wrestling history there. So I think that was a smart move on his part.
Yeah.
I think it was a smart move. Expanding the NWA name, and the talent, and it just gives you more talent is what it does. You got all the guys in Texas, you got all the guys in the Carolinas, and you've got a plethora of talent there that, it's just take your pick.
Did you feel any crunch on the worry about your position at all, or were you still feeling comfortable?
No, I never, competition doesn't scare me. I love it. I thrive on stuff like that. So I had that football mentality, if you're going to beat me, you're going to have to beat me.
Right.
Period.
You're going to have to take it from me. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to take it from me. And I'm going to make damn sure I'm competing. And if you take it from me, you deserve it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give it, to you.
Around this time, Nelson's guys, a lot of them are going up to WWF and working. I know Tommy, George, John, David, a lot of those guys are going up. I do see that in '88, you work a dart match with Barry Horowitz. Was that a tryout for the WWF?
Yeah, they called me. Bobby the Brain called me and said, hey, we want you to come. And so I went. I had a good match. But at that point in time, I guess this was Turner had already bought out Crockett Promotions, I think.
Yeah, it's right at this time. Yep.
Yeah, so I had left and went back to California. So I was kind of thinking, well, I'm not going to go back, because after my contract ran out with WCW, then and things just changed, and that's fine. Things change, and I didn't feel comfortable anymore in the business like I did, because Dusty wasn't around. He didn't have any control. It was higher ups that some of the higher ups had. They were marketing guys, but they weren't wrestling guys. And I think that's was the downfall of WCW, is it got too corporate-y to the point where, guys had no clue. but that's in the rear view now. But when I looked at it, I just said, when my contract was up and I went to Japan and all this and with WCW, and then I got the tryout, my heart really wasn't in it anymore. I was engaged to get married, was kind of going to go in a different direction.
Okay.
But I had a good match. I mean, my matches were still good, but it just never came to fruition, and I was okay with it.
I mean, but you seem like the ideal WWF guy to me. I mean, I could see Vince like wiping his chops off, like saying, "Oh my God, this is my next champion, pal." I mean, what did they say to you as far as how was the reaction?
They didn't say a lot. They came up and said, great match, and we'll be in touch. And I said, okay, this was in Greensboro, North Carolina, I think is where it was.
Okay. I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, at that point, if they had called me, it'd been great. If they didn't call me, I wasn't going to lose sleep over it because I'd already had other plans.
Okay.
And so having a plan B is always good.
You're right. You're right.
So, it's like playing any sport. There's going to come a time where, you're not going to be able to perform at your highest level. Your body's not going to react like it used to. And I think it hurts my heart to see some of these guys that are still, wrestling, and maybe they have to. And it hurts my heart to see them, going out there and taking a pounding every night. So my long-term plan was I'm going to do a business. I'm going to control my own destiny and kind of go in a different direction at that point.
Yeah, because you kind of, once you're to the point that you realize, hey man, I've had my shot at this, I've had my shot at this. I'm not going to get tripped up by my what ifs. I'm gonna do something about it, Yeah, and when Turner bought out WCW, I went back to California for a year, and I was in the Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood. That's smart.
I did Tango and Cash. I did Rocky V.
That's awesome.
I did voiceovers for Everybody's All-American with Dennis Quaid and Jessica Lange. It was just on the other night. I don't know if have you seen Everybody's All-American?
I've seen that. Yeah. What part?
I did all the voiceovers for all the football scenes.
Oh, wow.
I did all the voiceovers for that. And I did some Matlocks. Yeah, I did a couple of Matlocks with Andy Griffith, a couple of L.A. Laws. And then I was on the set of Tango and Cash when Dusty called me. And... and Dusty and Magnum called me, and Dusty goes, "What are you doing, kid?" I said, "Well, Dusty, I'm kind of busy right now. I'm on the set of Tango and Cash." He goes, "What are you doing on the set of Tango and Cash?" I said, "I'm in it." He goes, okay. Anyway, got to know Sylvester Stallone pretty good, and bodyguards, we're all friends and stuff like that, and went to a couple of his parties and had some
very cool. Yeah.
But after that, Dusty said, "Call me when you're done." I said, "Okay." And so I called him. And he goes, "Let me tell you what we're doing." And he started going into the Patriots vision and all that. And I said, "Well, Dust," I said, "I've got some good stuff going on out here." He said, "I'll fly you back to Atlanta. Let's talk."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." So I flew back, and I don't know if you remember a movie called Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth.
Of course. Yeah.
But I was going to double him in fight scenes and stuff because word got out I could throw a punch and not hurt somebody. And so they all wanted me in their fight scenes, even Stallone.
Right.
So anyway, I was flying back to Atlanta. I got a call the day before saying, "Hey, we want you to come and do 3 weeks on the set with Brian Bosworth." And I said, "Well, I've got to go to Atlanta and meet with some people. Can I get back with you?" He said, "Yeah, that's fine." And I flew back and met Dusty and talked to Magnum and, started talking, contracts. And then there were guarantees. And I said, if I'm going to come here, I need to have a long-term guarantee, or at least a 3-year guarantee, or whatever. You know? And because back when it was territories, they paid you on the house a percentage depending on what part of the card you were on.
Yeah.
And Turner's got deep pockets. I knew it, and so I didn't have an agent. So I called my cousin, who's a lawyer in Nebraska, contract lawyer, and they faxed me the contracts, and I sent them to him, let him look at them.
Yeah.
And then I looked at it and I said, "Well, am I making more money doing this, or am I making more money doing that?" And I kind of did the math in my head, and I go, "Well, if I stay here this long, I'll make more than I'm doing." So I called the studio and said, "Hey, I'm going to have to bow out of the Brian Bosworth thing." They go, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to go back into my professional wrestling, and I got to move back to Atlanta."
Yeah.
So that's how it got me back here.
Well, I just recently watched that movie, very recently. I mean, it was just like maybe a week ago. And I know there's a scene where Tom McGee, the wrestler that he had a good match with Bret Hart, but never really got everything else together. He was a Canadian guy. There's a scene where he's fighting Bosworth on the beach, I think early on or something, or somebody. Anyway, long story short, I can totally see you doubling Bosworth, though. That's pretty crazy. You know,
and I told my mom, I said, I'm going to do this. This will be fun. This is 3 weeks. And, you know, I was in the union, so it paid pretty good. And I'm new in the business, and I already knew there were producers when I did Matlock, they wanted me to be a boxer. And the whole storyline was built around this promoter who put this guy in the ring with me, and I kill him by accident. But he knew I was going to beat the snot out of him, and I hit him and knocked him out and killed him and all that. So they called me before they had people coming in to interview and tryouts where they get you in the ring. You stay, you go, whatever. They had already told me before the interview I had the part, but I still had to go through the motions.
Gotcha.
So I get there and I do my boxing thing, and there's like 15 guys there. And all right, everybody can leave. Todd, you stay. And I just sat there, you know.
How was Andy? I got to ask, how was Andy to be around?
I tell you what, when I did the Matlock, the first Matlock with him, he was, you know, he's a big North Carolina guy.
Oh yeah.
And we started talking about Raleigh and Charlotte and all, you know, the little towns in between, and we just hit it off. I mean, yeah. I loved him to death. He's super nice, you know, and so anyway, so that's how I met him. And then on Tango on Cash, Kurt Russell and I got to be buddies, and I was doing a fight scene with Stallone in the prison. Yeah. Where we're fighting, and then he kicks me and I go flying through the table and all that fun stuff. But before all that, me and Kurt Russell were talking, and he had a cabin somewhere in North Carolina talking about how beautiful it is, and I told him that's where I'm from. And next thing I know, I'm in his trailer, and we're sitting in there talking for about an hour and a half, and they had to come get us to get back on the set. But
wow.
So I had some interesting times as far as that goes. I look back and wonder if I had stayed, I wonder what I'd be doing now. But you never know.
You never know. You never know, man. That's crazy. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's very cool.
So it looks like in around 89, you went to All Japan. What was your connection there? Is it Nelson help in that?
It was Nelson. He came to me and said, hey, they said they want some talent in Japan, and I want to send you there.
Yeah.
I said, shoot, I'll go. But I didn't know my tag team partner was going to be Terry Gordy either. So I got there. And so next thing I know, Terry's on the plane with me, and we're talking, and this was my first trip, you know, and everybody else, they'd been on this trip probably 10 times before I got there. Yeah. So they all knew how to, you know, go to sleep, and I was miserable the whole time sitting in that little dinky seat of mine. And we get there, and Terry, you know, we wrestled Giant Baba and all those guys.
Jumbo Saruta and John Tenta and...
Yeah, all those cats. And it was funny because I'd never been there, so it was my first experience. And we fly in, get our hotel, and then, you know, got a couple hours of sleep. Then they banged on the door and said, hey, we got to go. And we got up, got in a limo, and they took us to the Tokyo Dome. And I didn't realize the pageantry there, the way they do things. I mean, we got there, and Terry goes, we got to go to the ring. I said, for what? He said, they got to give us some flowers. I said, give us some flowers? He goes, yeah. So I'm standing in the ring, and the streamers are falling, and music's playing, and they're giving us flowers. And I'm like, man, it's like the Super Bowl or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so, you know, we wrestled in Japan and all the little towns in between. And so that was a great experience.
No doubt, man. I mean, how was, I guess, Terry, did you learn anything interesting from Terry that maybe you didn't know before, other than the pageantry?
Yeah, I did. It was funny because I'm in the ring, and I lock up with this dude. I can't remember his name, Japanese partner. And these guys barely spoke any English. And so Terry tags me in. Boom, I get in. Boom, we're doing something. Guy backs me in a corner, and he starts roundhouse kicking the shit out of me. I mean, laying them in. And I'm like, and I'm looking over at Terry, and I'm getting pissed. And Terry's looking at me with this kind of that grin he had, that little pirate smile he's got. And he looked at me and goes, just kick his ass, he'll stop. And I went, what? Okay. So this guy's roundhousing me, kicking me, and that's when I realized they wrestle stiff here. They don't wrestle light. So I grabbed his leg and I threw a forearm, hit him right in the jaw, dropped him. I dropped him, and I got him on the mat, and I cross-faced him, held him down on the mat, and I said, "You want to fight or you want to wrestle?" And after that, we had a great match. It was awesome.
That's awesome. So you just had to show them that you were going to kick too if you needed a,
Yeah. And I watched Terry get in the ring, and I said, "Holy crap, he's beating the snot out of these guys. They're not getting pissed off at him." But that's how they were. That they wanted it that way. And
that's
once
awesome.
I got acclimated, it was get out there and be physical, and that's right up my alley after playing football. So that worked out perfect. And Terry was a great guy. He could drink tons of sake. I couldn't keep up with him. He took us, and we went to this men's club where you get a massage and a steam, and then you sit around in your robe all day or whatever. So he took me one of them places. He said, "I'm telling you," and Terry Gordy had this deep, gravelly voice. He talked like this.
Right.
He said, "Todd," he said, "now this old lady, she's going to give you a massage, and she's going to hurt you, and she weighs about 80 pounds. I said, so anyway, we get in there. Yeah, it's funny. But we get in there, and sure enough, man, I'd done the whole wash yourself bathe and all that, and the steam, and I laying down, and this little bony Japanese lady, and she was pretty old. And I said, "Man, she ain't going to do nothing."
Right.
And I'll tell you, when she was done with me, I was in tears and I was sweating. She hit every nerve that I had, every knot I had. And she would literally stand on the table and drop down and drop her elbow in the middle of my back and find those knots. And that was the best sleep that night I'd gotten in years. We went and had dinner. I went back to the room and I slept like a baby. I felt great too. That was awesome after that. But man, I didn't realize it was a deep tissue from hell.
Yeah.
They like the stiff massages too, right?
Yeah, I guess. It was funny because I didn't believe him. And man, this lady walked in there and she made me feel like I was 2 years old. When she was done, I was sweating and crying and screaming and yelling, and he was laughing the whole time.
So, and you being a big protein eating monster, did you do okay on the diet in Japan as far as what they ate, or did you?
I lost 15 pounds in Japan, and I was eating all the time.
Yeah.
I was eating all the time. And I didn't realize that a lot of the guys, and they, of course, they didn't tell me this either, they brought their own tuna with them, and they brought bags of tuna. And so you go to a restaurant, and they're eating fish, and you get tired of all that, and they would say, "Just bring me some rice." And they bring a big thing of rice. The guy get their cans of tuna, throw it on top of the rice, and that's how they kept their protein up.
Okay, and that makes sense.
Yeah, so I learned that lesson.
I heard that was a thing with Brody, that Brody liked to carry around a ton of tuna cans, and he would just hammer down on the tuna, and that was one way he stayed cheap and didn't spend a lot of money, but also got his protein. So
right, because at the time, Japan, even back then, hamburger was $5-6.
Right.
And I so that's how guys did it. So I learned I'd go buy a bunch of tuna too, and that's what I do. I just follow along with the crowd, and it made sense. I mean, it was good, it was healthy, and I just couldn't get full on their food, no matter what I did. I couldn't get full. So I'd have to get, I had to do like everybody else and borrow some tuna from somebody, or Terry give me a couple cans, and that's what we did. So being a big history buff, I was interested in World War II and stuff like that. So going to see where the bomb, in Nagasaki and all that, just seeing those museums, man, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And, I've been to Pearl Harbor. My brother has too. And I always see a ton of Japanese people there. And it's always like, what are y'all here for? Maybe they felt the same way about you being in Nagasaki. But anyway, yeah. They're like, what's he here for? What's he looking at? What is he? Don't mess with America is all I gotta say. Exactly. Well, of course, Todd, you're gonna say that, of course, Mr. Patriot. I love it. So, well, speaking of that, before we get to the WCW conversation some more, you actually, and I never knew this, and tell me if I'm right about this, because this is a total assumption. All right, you're 6'6", blonde, big rugged dude, but you had some, like you said, Hollywood looks about you, and you're working in Mexico, and you working as a character KGB. Was that by chance a throw off of like Dolph Lundgren's Rocky Ivan Drago at all?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay.
And it went over pretty good there.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I when living in California, I used to go to Mexico all the time.
Okay.
So I kind of knew my way around. I mean, when I was in high school, we'd drive to Tijuana on the weekends, and it was just a 2-hour ride straight down to the border. That was before the border got really stiff, but you could go down there and park your car and walk and not worry about getting, mugged or whatever.
Right.
But back then,
kidnapped by the cartel or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like that back then. It was easy.
Gotcha.
You go across. You got anything to declare? No, I got nothing. Okay, see you. Go ahead. That's what it was. But now it's a different animal. But back then, so I was pretty familiar with the area, and the character did okay. It did fine. I mean, I was cool with it. But you got to try new things. You never, some guy, you got to reinvent yourself every once in a while.
Of course. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
So I was open. I was open to whatever we decided to do. I said, well, let's give it a shot. See what happens.
Yeah. Now, what'd you think about bumping in those rings down there?
Well, those rings weren't like the rings in WCW and the rings I was used to, because it was basically a boxing ring with a mat on it.
Right.
And then they were a little stiff. They were the ropes. I can't remember which match it was, but there was a couple matches before me, and the rope broke, and the guy fell out into the crowd. Hit the ropes, and the ring rope broke. And I said, I'm not hitting them ropes. And so they had to go out there. They had to go out there and fix them and all that. But yeah, it was just different. It was a different deal. But it was okay. I mean, you get, like anything else, you work with what you got, right? So
right, exactly.
It was kind of like in Japan, the last match I had. It was an outdoor match, and it was in this real small Japanese town. And I said, "Shoot, how's it going to get people coming to this thing?" The thing was packed. It was right after a typhoon had come through, and so the ring wasn't covered. So you went out there and took bumps. When you hit the mat, water would fly up out of the mat.
Right. Like you're squeezing a sponge.
Yeah. So every time you hit water, it just fly everywhere. But so you work with what you got,
Right.
That's right. It's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Booty Call and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah.
Join me, Gene Jackson, for the Jackson Interaction Podcast, where I'll be doing one-on-one interviews with people from the world of professional wrestling, as well as stand-up comedy. You can get them anywhere podcasts are available in both video and audio form, but you can find them all at genejacksonpod.com.
Well, so we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but you do end up going back. I think in 91, it says you end up back in WCW and you come back. Right. And obviously now it's owned by Turner and everything's changing and all that. And now I got to ask this question because it's something that maybe didn't click with me in my mind in my younger days. But when you come back, there's a blonde-headed surfer, painted up guy, almost similar look to you, Sting. Had you met him before you came back?
Are you talking about, oh God, what's his name?
Sting. That's what I'm talking about. No, I'm not
Sting. Oh, you're talking about Sting. There was another blonde-haired surfer guy.
Right, Laurinaitis. Yeah.
But anyway, no, Sting was cool.
Yeah.
Sting was cool. He's always a nice guy. He was always nice to me. And I was at kind of the peak of my physicality, so to speak. I was really in good shape, and I was really watching what I ate. I ate a lot, but I ate healthy. Unlike my tag team partner, Curtis Thompson. I don't know if you had him on yet.
No, we want to though.
that guy loved cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
And we'd be on the road, and he'd go, "Hey, pull in here real quick." He'd eat like 7 cheeseburgers. And not get gosh. I'm like, what? How you do it?
Yeah.
But anyway, no. But Sting was a nice guy, always nice to me. And
I'm just, maybe the curious thing I have, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I'm just curious if he sees you and he's like, holy crap, this guy's been here longer than me. And I know he's been away, but he's been to Japan and Mexico. He's been around the world. Do I need to say something about his look and maybe keep him on a certain path? Or was that even thought of? I mean, because if you put okay, cool.
Sting's about 6'1" or 2", and I'm 6'6". So
right.
You know, which
would be even more important for me to worry about you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. Well, there's a lot of jealousy in the business, you know, and
sure.
It's some of it's really political. That was the part of the business I didn't like, because I wasn't a political guy. I wasn't in the cliques. You know, I just thought if you did your job, you did it well, you know, they would give you a promotion. Well, that wasn't always true, but I had to learn that. You know, I didn't know. You know, I was still trying to be, you know, an upstanding citizen and not worry about the guy next to me. And I thought I needed to do my job and do it better and go that route. So I don't think, you know, he might have thought that, but it never got to me through the grapevine that was what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. And then that is just me pulling that out of thin air. You know, I'm not saying like, hey, Sting told me a little story about you. No, I mean, Sting, we would love to have Sting on the show, obviously. But at the same time, I just was thinking, you know, I've been watching every time we do a show, I will start watching the guys' matches and stuff. And I was like, holy cow, man, he's like an even bigger Sting kind of, you know, and there was a certain point where you're wearing the blue tights with the Olympic rings on it. And I'm like,
I designed all that myself too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
All my outfits I did myself.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
Because the original match was me and Curtis against the Ring Lords, and we were these Army guys, you know, and he was the fireman. There were originally going to be 4 characters in the Patriots. I don't know if you knew that or not.
There was an astronaut and a cop. Yeah. Right?
Astronaut and a cop and a fireman and an Army guy. They were going to actually think about doing a cartoon called The Patriots for kids.
Oh my God, that would be yeah.
Well, if they would have followed up with that, it would have took off. No doubt.
It would have been huge. No, did they say who was that going to be?
Fireman. Yeah. Every kid wants to be a fireman or Army guy or astronaut or whatever. No telling how the marketing, if they'd had somebody a little smarter in there, I think it would have just been phenomenal, because when I got there, that's what I was told. And then when I got there again and we had to stand in front of the board, Dusty goes, hey, we're just going to go with you and Curtis. We're not going to bring in anybody else. We're going to call you the Patriots. And then he kind of laid it out for me.
I mean, did they say any chance of who would be the astronaut and the cop, or was it just a thought?
No, it was at the beginning, it was 4 guys and it got whittled down to 2. And
gotcha.
My first match, I had Desert Storm boots on and fatigues and fatigue shirt. And I kept ripping out my pants. There was no flexibility in them pants. And so finally I said, there's got to be a better way. So I said, I'm just going to design my own tights, you know. And I had red, white, blue tights. I had green tights. I had white tights. I had red boots, blue boots, white boots. I had kind of a camo boot. And all those outfits and those coats, I designed myself.
That's amazing.
And I had somebody make them for me.
That's very cool. Yeah. I just can imagine, let's just say, and I've brought him up a million times, but let's put Tommy Angel as the astronaut. Let's put David Isley with the mustache as the cop. And
he'd be perfect.
He would be, right? Come on.
He looks like the guy, remember the show 1 Adam 12?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it'd be perfect. And I'll tell you a little something about Isley. You know, when I was probably my first year officially starting with NWA, that's when, you know, David was breaking into business.
Yeah.
And we would train in Nelson Royal's ring, and I'd go out there and train with him. And then I said, I'd go on the road, and I said, hey, Dave, I had a condo in Concord, really nice townhome that I bought. And I said, hey, will you house sit? I'm going to be gone like 4 days, 5 days straight. Will you just grab the mail, hang out at the house, you know, eat what's in the fridge, do whatever. He goes, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And so he comes up, and I didn't know it till years later that he was throwing parties at my freaking townhouse while I was gone.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
He didn't tell me for a couple of years, but after the smoke cleared, he finally told me, man, I used to throw parties there. They were killer. I said, well, you did a good job cleaning up, because I never knew you did it.
It's kind of like, ooh, I feel a little used, but that's good though. I mean, you know.
I love David to death. He was funny.
He's great.
Yeah, he used to party at your house all the time. So where was I? He goes, you were on the road.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's funny.
Talk to us about working the Freebirds.
Oh my gosh, Jimmy Garvin and those cats. Michael Hayes. Yeah, and we didn't even know at that time we were getting the straps. Back then they didn't tell you stuff till you got there.
Right.
It wasn't like we're going to talk about you're going to get the straps on this date like they do now. I mean, they tell them way ahead of time.
Right.
Back then they wanted to be more spontaneous, And so we roll into, where were we? Oh, we were here in Georgia. We were in Stone Mountain, Georgia, at the arena there, and me and Curtis come wheeling in. I just bought a Corvette, and Curtis comes wheeling in, and he bought one too. So here we are pulling into the arena. I've got a green Corvette, and he's got a white one, and we wheel in there, and go in their building, and we got there a couple hours early, and we're eating and just kind of hanging out, kind of saying when they pass out the itinerary, and we looked, and all of a sudden the itinerary says, straps going on the Patriots against the Freebirds.
Oh wow!
And I went, holy crap! We've only been with WCW for 6 months.
Yeah.
And they're putting the straps on us right now. I felt like we weren't ready. My personal opinion.
Gotcha.
I felt like, and I almost felt bad because the Freebirds are the Freebirds. They've been doing this since Jesus was a baby.
Right. Right.
And I felt like, we didn't even work a program with them. We just beat them.
Right. Right.
And it wasn't even built. And that was the problem with WCW. They were, seems like they were always grasping that, they didn't give anything time.
Right.
If it didn't instantly take off, they moved on to the next one. If that didn't instantly, they moved on to the next one. And I think in the long run, that hurt WCW.
I agree. Yeah.
I was glad to have the straps and run with them like we did, but it wasn't long. We were giving them up to the Young Guns down here at Center Stage in Atlanta.
Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong. Talk a little bit about them while we're at it. Yeah.
Oh, love them guys to death. Piece of cake, night off, great guys. They were just, they're great workers.
Yeah.
Great workers.
Steve, like Armstrongs are great. And then, of course, Tracy Smothers is basically like a step Armstrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I loved him too.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny guy.
But I love Brad, and I loved his dad. Brad lived here in Marietta, Georgia, and he's buried here too.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, that was a tragedy. He was too young. But, all the Armstrong family, they were all just, those guys, were genuinely nice people.
Yeah.
They were just nice people, nice human beings. Do anything in the world for you. I think, they had Brad in WCW, and he was Spider-Man or whatever they were calling him.
Right. Arachnaman. Yeah.
Arachnaman. They didn't use him right. There's another great talent that I looked at and I go, why are they doing this? He's, and
why does he need a mask? Great body, and you're covering it all up.
And he was a good athlete, and they just, they were just, it's almost like I felt like at some point they forgot how to work a program. And then when they did work the program, there's a reason why WCW's not around and WWE's still in business. So
there you go. Yeah.
It was just one of those things. And that was one of the reasons when I went to the Mid-South with Jerry Lawler, I was a heel there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd never been a heel ever.
Yeah.
So it was his idea to turn me heel, and I go, Jerry, I said, I don't know what to say. He said, just be an ass. I said, okay. And then they did This Is Your Life, Todd Champion, and I did that whole spiel, brought all my helmets in and all these awards and all this crap, and just talked about just off the top of my head, no script, just kind of did it at random. And then, then we actually, me and Lawler had some really good matches in the Mid-South Coliseum when he dropped the strap there to me. Yeah. And then at the time, my ex-wife was my fiance, and she was with me on my second tour to Mid-South. And I was, I'm a big Elvis fan. So I did the whole Elvis tour thing and did all that. And so I'm thinking on the next day was TV. And I was thinking, how can I really piss these people off and make them want to pay tickets to watch me get my butt kicked?
Yeah.
And so I get in the ring. We're in the Mid-South Coliseum, and I was talking about how, in the interviews prior to that, I was talking about a bunch of fat rednecks and you wish you looked like me, and I'd take my shirt off and flex and all that stuff and tell them to go back to their fat husbands and all this stuff. Just trying to create some heat, and
sure.
I got in the ring, and there's this little old lady, and she must have been 90 then, and she was in a walker on the front row cussing me like a sailor. She was saying words I'd never heard before. And I'm standing in the ring waiting for Lawler to make his entrance. And I said, "Hey, old lady." And she looked at me and she called me. She said, "What do you want, you blankety blank, 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 blank?" And I went, "Did you buy a ticket tonight?" She goes, "I sure did, you blankety blank, 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 blank." I said, "Well, thanks for making my Mercedes-Benz payment."
Oh man!
And I thought she was going to stroke out right there on the front row.
I bet.
But she was ready to kill me. Her cane went up, her walker went up. She was ready. She was good. I think she forgot she was old. She was ready to come in and fight me.
Yeah.
And then of course me and Lawler had that match, and then we were in Kentucky. I got so much heat in Kentucky that they had to have a police escort me out to the freeway.
Wow.
There were guys in the parking lot they were waiting on me. They were so mad at me. And of course my fiance, she's like, "Why are they so mad at you?" I said, "Honey, it's a long story. Just get in the car." I had to explain to her, these people don't like me because I'm making them not like me.
Right.
And anyway, so it was just, stories like that, they were a lot of fun.
So around this time, there was talk of possibly WCW and USWA working together, as USWA would be somewhat of like a feeder system for kind of like how they turned into for the WWF a little bit later. Did that have anything to do with you being out there, or were you solely out there on your own? What was the story?
I was out there. Yeah, I was out there on my own.
Okay.
Once I was done with the Mid-South stuff and came back, I was, like I said, that all came along after the fact,
Gotcha.
So I didn't have a lot of feedback in that, or at that point, I had my health club. I was running it. I was busy, running a business and and doing all that and getting married and all that stuff that comes with getting married and having my first child, that one, my second child. So there was a lot going on. So that didn't really, at that point, I was kind of out of the loop,
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so working in Memphis, obviously, like I said, a lot of our listener base is based out of Tennessee, and to them, Memphis is the number one spot, and we respect that and love that. And I love Memphis wrestling. I'm an adoptee of Memphis, and, but working Lawler, man, and again, you may have somebody, but is there anybody who throws a better punch than Lawler? I mean, in the world?
Ric Flair does.
Well, okay. Touche. Fair enough. Yeah. But okay, but you would say Lawler's is close to that one, right? At least.
Absolutely. And looking back on it, after I left, I wish I'd have went back and worked that deal a little better, because, at that point I was thinking, of retiring and getting married and settling down and having a family. And I didn't think being on the road and being married was a good combination, as far as marriages go.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but when I look back on it, I wish I would have went back and worked that program a little better, because I heard the other day Jerry Lawler was wondering where I was, because after I left wrestling, I kind of disassociated myself with everything, and I'd watch it, but I just, I didn't stay in touch with too many guys.
Sure.
And, he was wondering where I was at. And I look back on it now, like I said, I wish I would have just said, you know what, let's work this, let's do this, let's keep going with this, because I think we had something there. And me being a heel, I had more fun being a heel than I did anything, because I could kind of, play off people's emotions, and I didn't have to smile and be the nice guy all the time,
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of guys nowadays, these new kids, they like to do that slap the thigh and do the kick or the punch or whatever they do. They slap a thigh to give that sound effect. I've heard, I have another podcast with a Memphis wrestler, Wolfie D. Anyway, Jerry would slap you in the side when he would throw a punch. Did you ever feel that? Did he ever do that to you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me. The harder you slap me, the better I liked it. You know, that was fun.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're made of glass. I don't mean it that way.
No.
I'm just saying, you know, like some guys are like, hold on, man, that slapped, you know, but.
Well, it's like the old saying was, if you can't take a punch, don't get in the business.
There you go.
That was kind of our mantra. And if a guy potatoed you one time, so what? No big deal. He didn't mean.
I would also say if you can't throw a punch, don't get in the business. But that's a whole other thing too. You know.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But that's true too, though. That's very true.
Yeah. But anyway, we love Memphis. We've become big fans of Memphis wrestling. Especially, I did a little time in the business in the Nashville outlaw scene and got to know all these guys. I actually got to manage Dutch Mantell versus Jerry Lawler, and I took one of Lawler's punches. It was awesome. I had a blast doing it. I wish I could have done it more, but that's how I got into my little foot in the business, and it was a lot of fun, man. But doing it all out there, that's a totally different breed of cat, that Memphis wrestling fan. They are it's probably the reason they were the last true territory going, you know. Well,
they have such a history there. Anybody who's been anybody goes through Memphis. Anybody, from Flair to Hulk Hogan to Macho Man to you name them, they've been in Memphis.
Exactly.
And so they've got a real rich history, wrestling history.
Yeah.
And just being a part of that wrestling history is something that you can't take away.
Right.
And so just being there, and like you said, I didn't realize the fan base in Memphis was like it was till I got there, because I was actually at an ATM across the street from Elvis Presley's mansion, and I had a ball cap on and some sweats. You know, I didn't want anybody to notice me, and I'd already done all these promos and stuff. And some guy pulls up in a truck and just looks over at me at a stoplight and goes, "Kick Jerry Lawler's ass tonight." I went, "Okay." And he drove off. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's when I said, okay, there's something to this over here. These people, they're serious. And then, you know, being in Memphis and Kentucky with little Jerry and working all those arenas with him, it was, you know, in all honesty, with Jerry Lawler, you know, he's the king for a reason. So it was easy to get heat there, because if you turned on Jerry Lawler, you instantly had heat. You know, we had when who was my manager in Memphis? I can't remember his name. He's passed away now. I see his face. Anyway, we had a match where, you know.
Was it Burt Prentice, Christopher Love?
Burt Prentice, yeah. I can't believe I forgot his name. Anyway, so Burt came to me and said, we're going to do this, and I'm going to throw the knuckles, and you hit Lawler and cover him 1, 2, 3. And then so we had a return match where Prentice was going to be chained to Jeff Jarrett, so he couldn't get in the ring and interfere, you know. And that was a great match. And I cut some promos on Jeff Jarrett, calling him Goldilocks and all this stuff. And you know, just thinking of things off the top of my head, and you know, being the you know, I wanted them. Told them I was the best athlete they'd ever seen, and the best athlete they'll ever see, and look at me and how great I am and all this stuff. And so that's how I got my heat. And especially when, you know, I beat Lawler for the title, that's when things when we had that return match in the Mid-South Coliseum, it was packed to the rafters.
Yeah.
I mean, I pulled in the parking lot and it was like, I went, holy crap. And the police escorted me in, got me in the locker room, and I was kind of peeking out of the curtain looking at, and that place was just packed to the rim.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we got something here.
Yeah. Did you like working the loop too, like the fairgrounds in Nashville and Louisville Gardens and all that? Did you enjoy that loop?
Yeah, I enjoy it. Man, I'm a sightseer by nature, man. I always go early so I could go around and, you know, like the botanical gardens and all that stuff. I always wanted to just go see stuff. You know, that's education to me. So, because when I was supposed to be I got to Memphis 3 days early, so I could just go to Elvis Presley's house, you know.
Yeah,
I wanted
Graceland. Yeah,
you know, I'm a tourist at heart, I guess, but yeah,
and that's you as wrestlers didn't always get that opportunity. You would hit the town, and a lot of times you had to be back on the road, you know. So. Right.
I mean, it was when we did the Great American Bashes in NWA, and we were wrestling in Fulton County Stadium. You know, we had to be there that night for the match, Great American Bash, and that was all day affair. Yeah. And of course, they had David Allen Co. and all those guys in the concert after the fact. and then we'd all leave and head to Charlotte. And, so we didn't really get to enjoy the concert or any of that stuff because we had to be back in Charlotte to cut promos the next morning and then in the Coliseum that night. So
yeah. If you want to get any sleep, you got to get on the road to get somewhere. So
yeah, and it's funny because I had a big Mercury Grand Marquis that I drove. So so Boogie Woogie would always want to ride with me, but he never would drive. He'd just pay me to drive, and he'd sleep the whole time. We would be in the car. We'd be in the car 10 minutes. I look over and he's snoring like a log, man. He's out like a light. Boogie came out to Kansas City when we were there, and he and I were on the road. And we're out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and I get a flat tire, and I'm like, oh shit. So I said, Boogie, get in the trunk and go get the jack and stuff, and da-da-da-da. And he never got out of the car. Never got out. And I'm like, damn. So I open the door, I get out. So by the time I jack the car and get the wheel off, he's standing outside. Well, I'd already changed the tire and put the spare on and all that. And he was, I'd have helped you, brother, but I didn't know you were doing all this. I went, dude, I'm right here.
You're standing there holding the car up. Can you just put the tire on?
and it was cold too, and he wasn't having none of it.
Yeah, I believe that. That is. But I mean, dude, for all the reasons you would be annoyed by him, you gotta love him too, right? It's just like,
I wasn't annoyed. I just was like, man.
He worked me.
As long as he would pay me really good to just drive him around when we were going on these trips in Kansas City, because he did not want to drive anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got to ask, because my mentor, the guy who got me in the business, Kenny Steele, he's from around that part of Virginia where Boogie has his wrestling school and stuff. And he said that Boogie had some pretty ferocious vegan farts or vegetarian farts. Now, again, this is kind of a weird question, but do you remember any of those powerful?
I'm glad I don't remember any of that.
Thank God.
Yeah. He was asleep most of the time, so I don't think he knew what he was doing.
Okay, fair enough.
But he had, he was a super nice guy, and he had a really beautiful daughter. He was always trying to hook me up with, and I was engaged with my first wife at the time. I said, Boogie, I'm engaged, and he goes, oh, you just got to meet her, and she was beautiful. I will say that, but. It never worked out, but, I'm sure she married well.
I'm sure. She's all right.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about now you go back to WCW and you have an excellent feud with Lord Steven Regal.
Yeah, what's funny? I just watched that match the other day on the internet.
I did too, man. I did too.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of the, and this is the typical WCW, it was a spur of the moment thing.
Right.
And, so I start thinking, okay, what am I going to say? He's British, I'm American, talk about the Revolutionary War. We kicked their ass once, we kicked their ass again, stuff like that. Yeah, but Regal is such a technician, and, he was so easy. I mean, he was doing moves, and we were talking, and I said, do whatever you want to do, man. I'm working with you.
Yeah.
And we got out there, and, we had great matches. We did. Yeah. We had great matches. He has that, arrogance, for the British thing, and everybody hates that, so he played that well. And, Bill Dundee was his, little manager.
Right.
And Terry Taylor, they were going to work an angle. But that was another angle that could have been just really milked for a long time.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, they were on to something else.
And see, that's what I can't figure out, because I feel like those matches, and no disrespect to your earlier stuff, please do not take any disrespect. I feel like especially you work in Lawler, but then also coming with Lord Steven, I feel like you had grown a whole lot as a worker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to be, not to knock the Warrior, but he couldn't wrestle 20, 30 minutes on his own. No. Yeah. He was a marketing tool. He looked good. He did cut great promos, I will say that. And he looked good. But, by the time he ran to the ring and blew himself up, he was good for 5 minutes.
Right.
But, not taking it away from him. I mean, but I loved working with guys that would teach me new stuff. Yeah. Because all that did was make me better. And that was just like playing football. If you want to get better, you block somebody better than you, and then you'll learn how to get better, and that's what it was all about. And I just felt like if they would have kept some of those programs going, we could have got, we would have got some time out of those programs, and people would have really, they could have built this thing up to be, really huge, and, America versus Britain all over again, just starting the Revolutionary War, a second round,
Right.
And Regal had, could cut the good promo, being arrogant, and I'm just a dumb American, and blah, blah, blah. But they would hop from program to program. It was like they were looking for that magical instant karma that they never got,
Yeah. I think y'all could have easily had a 6-month storyline out of that. It would have been simple. It would have been, I mean, you would have thought it was what they call a layup, right? That's just like, that's all you needed. And dude, you were looking great. Lord Steven Regal is always great, especially at that time. He was that arrogant. I smell that faith. Yeah. It was just so good, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like I said, when I look back on these programs that they were so quick and short, it was just like, what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? Well, we're not even keep a TV audience, watching, because we don't, our storyline will last 2 or 3 weeks and then on to the next thing.
Right.
And it just never, I think that's where WCW missed the boat. I'm not, the great, idea man, but I do think, looking back on things after it's over, if they would have did certain things a little differently, WCW might still be around. We all might be doing a little better in life, but but I wasn't the boss. I wasn't the booker. I wasn't the brains behind the operation. I wish I'd have had a little more input on the creativity side of it. But back then, they told you what to do. You didn't have a choice.
Right.
Hulk Hogan had a choice and guys like that, but they had already built the reputation, and so they could kind of speak their minds. But they basically said, this is what you're doing, this is what we're doing. And if it was a bad program, you can't really blame that on the wrestler.
No.
At the end of the day, you got to look at, the promoters had to look themselves in the eye and say, what are we doing wrong? Because there's too much talent out there to not be getting over.
Right. Right.
And that's where I think WCW made a mistake. Because when I was there, Eric Bischoff was just an announcer.
Right. Exactly.
That's all he was. He just did interviews. So he kind of got that job by, there was nobody else left.
Right. Process of elimination. Yeah.
And then he got the job, and then, they had okay runs, but it got a little, just me watching it like a fan. If I was a fan and watching it didn't keep my attention very long.
Yeah.
And they kind of lost that magic like we had in the NWA, where these programs would go on for months or a year or two.
Right. Right.
And it made things, it made the business, what it was. And, we had the feud with Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, and then Magnum, and Nikita comes in, and Ivan Koloff, and the Russian Bear, and you had the Russians versus the Americans, and all those angles. I mean, those were great storylines that had traction and drew money. I remember going to the Charlotte Coliseum, and I had my first Russian chain match with Ivan Koloff.
Okay.
And Uncle Ivan, as we like to call him.
Uncle Ivan.
I loved Ivan to death. Loved him. Yeah. He's another Minnesota guy. Anyway, loved him to death. Probably the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And we had a Russian chain match, and no one had ever told me how to do it. And I watched chain matches, but I didn't know about the Russian how to touch 4 corners and drag guys around and all that. And that was the first time I'd ever gotten color. And to talk about an experience there. I was told to take 2 aspirin before the match.
Okay.
And to thin out your blood a little bit.
Right.
And then Ivan, I said, Ivan, I don't know how to do that. And he said, don't worry about it. I'll do it for you. I went, really? He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. Man, we were going at it, hitting each other with the chain, and finally I'm down on my back, and he's on top of me with the chain, and he goes, don't move. And I'll hear this right across my forehead.
Oh, man.
Oh, shit. I heard this grinding noise. That's why I could describe it. It's like a grinding noise.
Wow.
And he's hitting me, and I'm hitting him, and next thing you know, I look down, there's blood all running down the front of my chest onto the ring. When I walked out, my face was just red. You couldn't hardly see my face. There was so much blood on me.
Yeah. Where you're like breathing and the blood spraying off of your.
Oh yeah, and people are like freaking out because I had him beat, and then all of a sudden he hits me with the chain and all that, and and so I get in the locker room, and I walked in, and everybody in the locker room was like, their eyes got real big. I said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He goes, "You might want to go in the shower and clean that up." And next thing I know, I'm getting butterflied on my my forehead.
Yeah,
and had to get a little stitch in there. But it was a trip, man. I just remember him looking at me. It felt like he was cutting me from coast to coast, but it wasn't that big. But it felt like it. Felt like he was. When I heard this grinding noise on my forehead, I go, "Something's wrong here. Something's ripping."
Right, right. Oh man! So you work in those guys and stuff like that. I don't want to go too far back, but did you ever have any run-ins with the Road Warriors at all? Did you hang out with those guys?
I loved Hawk and Animal, especially Hawk. Man, he was he was the funniest dude.
Yeah,
he was like the jokester of the locker room.
Right. Right.
And he would come in and he would just make everything okay. He's just funny dude, nice guy. One night I can't remember where we were, and had to get a hotel, and so I was getting a room with him that night. And the next day I said, "Hawk, how much I owe you for this room?" And I started counting out money. He says, "You keep your money. I'm doing pretty good right now."
Yeah.
And he was that type of guy.
Right. Right.
He was that type of dude. Now, could the dude party? Absolutely. There's no way I could keep up with him. Right. I couldn't keep up with Ric Flair either. I went out with Ric one night. They had me, they call it the A-Team, and I was flying on the private jet with me, Jim Crockett, Dusty, Magnum, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard.
Okay.
And they had me on the jet with them. I don't know why I was on the jet with them, but I got on the jet. And that night, Flair goes, "Hey, we're going out, and you're going with me, rookie." I said, "Okay." So we went out. And we were staying at the Marriott in downtown Atlanta, and we'd had several drinks, and the Rock and Roll Express were in there too. And so I'm standing there, I'll never forget this. And I told Flair, I said, "Rick, I can't do this. I got to go to bed. We got to be at TV taping at 7 a.m. This was like at 1 o'clock, and he was just getting started.
Right.
And I said, "I'm getting tired, man. I got to go." He said, "Well, just have one more drink." And I said, "Dude, if I drink one more, I'm going to pass out. I can't do it." He goes, "Just one." So anyway, so I took the bait and had another drink, and this girl walks up to me and starts like, "Ooh, here's muscles," and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, like that. She says, "I bet you," and she goes, "I bet you can't pick me up." And I said, "I bet you I can, but I don't want to."
Right.
She goes, just pick me up by my waist just one time. And so there was the floor was elevated above the dance floor.
Okay.
But the ceiling didn't get any higher.
Okay. Oh my God.
It gets better. Trust me. So anyway, she goes, "Just take me out. It's fine." I said, "Okay, I'm going to pick you up one time and I got to leave." She says, "Okay." So I grab her by the waist and I pick her up. And when I did, I heard this thump, thump. Oh no. And I pulled her down and she was knocked out. I put her head in a ceiling fan.
Oh my God.
And I go, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she wasn't talking. And I sat her in the chair. Now she'll probably come look me up and sue me. I don't know.
Right.
Anyway.
What's the statute of limitations on that?
Yeah, I think that was a long time ago. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and Ricky Morton's sitting at the bar. He goes, "Go to your room. Just go to your room." I said, "What are you talking about?" "Get out of here. Go to your room." So I run upstairs and go to bed, and I'm hiding, right? I'm all nervous and stuff. And
right.
So we roll into Turner's studio to do the taping. And we're all sitting in the locker room getting dressed, and Crockett comes in pissed off. And he goes, "I want to know what's going on at that bar at the Marriott. This girl said some wrestler put her head in a ceiling fan." And I look, and Flair's looking at me, shaking his head, telling me to be quiet. I'm looking at Ricky and Robert and all these other guys, just saying, "Keep my mouth shut." He goes, "Who did it? Who did it?" And nobody said a word.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And I just sat there with my mouth shut. I'm the green guy, right? So I'm like stupid.
Right.
And so I just sat there. He goes, "I better not find out. This is going to cost me like $10,000 or so." I can't remember. He was bad.
Yeah.
And then Crockett leaves the room, and Flair starts laughing at me. starts laughing, and I looked at him. I said, "I'm never going out with you again. I don't like you. I just can't keep up."
Right. So that wasn't a rib. That was real. Like they didn't rib you about that girl. Wow, that's crazy.
Oh, well, they ribbed me, but they ribbed me in private. They would laugh and go, "Hey, you lifted anybody up in the fan lately?" You know, they'd say something. That went on for about a month, but they never did tell. Crockett never knew who it was.
Okay, gotcha.
But it was you know, stuff like that, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're going to fire me. I'm going to lose my job. The things are just getting going, and I do this stupid thing." You know?
Oh my gosh! I wonder where that poor girl with the hair chopped off the top of her head is now.
Oh man, and I had no idea because, like I said, the ceilings were the same height, but when you sit down on the dance floor,
right,
maybe 8 foot, 9 foot ceilings, but you stand up 2 or 3 feet.
Right.
You're 6.5 foot ceiling with a ceiling fan.
Right.
And I had no idea I was standing under a ceiling fan until I did it.
That's awesome. That's hilarious. That's very funny. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, so, that was 93 that you worked with Steven Regal. And then it looks like you take a little break and I guess you're doing your business thing and living your life. But then you wind up in Michinoku Pro in Japan and you're working as Pero Russo. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How did that come about?
It was just a phone call. I didn't, I was working in my gym and doing that thing and just got a phone call. And at the time, I was married then too, just newly married. And I looked at my wife. I said, "What do you think? I mean, the money's pretty good. I can go do that real quick and come home." She says, go do it. Get it out of she basically told me to get it out of my system.
Okay. Okay.
So I went there and I did that, did it, and it was pretty successful. But like I said, at that point in time, starting a family and all that, and I had other things on my mind, and I just said, this is going to be my last shot. I'm going to tell them, because I would get phone calls, all the time. "Hey, can you can you do this?" And I said, "Guys, I I appreciate the offer, and I would love to, but number one, I don't look like Todd. I'm 30 pounds lighter than when you guys remember me.
Right.
And I look like a dad instead of a wrestler."
Right.
So I said, I appreciate the offer. And I just kind of, like I said in some other parts, I just kind of bowed out gracefully. Didn't burn any bridges. I just felt like it was my time to, sometimes you got to know when to fold them,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I felt like, I'm in my, mid 30s, late 30s, I can't remember anyway. And baby on the way, just stuff happening. And I just said, I got to be here for this. I don't want to, I see a lot of guys in the business, and back when we were on the road a lot, I mean, driving everywhere, they weren't like flying us anywhere, unless it was really a long way. Right. And you're on the road and you got to plan your trips and get the maps out, and we go here and then here and then here and then back here. And, and you're gone for 2-3 weeks at a time, and then you get home and you're home for 4 days and you're back on the road. So,
right.
It's not it was hard. And I really want to give some props out to all the wives that hung in there with their husbands that did wrestle for a long time.
Yeah.
It's hard on the family.
Yeah. What did the Pero Russo mean, and where did that come from?
Okay. That was something they cooked up. I didn't think of it. They did. Okay. And for lack of a, I didn't really know what the hell it meant either. I just knew, and I used to know, and I forgot, what the hell did that mean? Anyway, I looked it up. But,
is it based off Spanish or Japanese, or what is it?
Pero Russo was Japanese.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But, yeah. But the gimmicks, to me, when something works and something don't,
Sure.
And you'll try it, but then you realize, this is not going good. It's like, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Eric Bischoff fired him from WCW.
Right.
And, he goes up to WWE and they're thinking up names. You hear him tell the story. They came up with all these goofy names. And then his wife is the one that thought of Stone Cold because she gave him some tea and said, "This tea, you better drink this tea before it gets stone cold." And it's like a light came on.
Right. Right.
From then on, he was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, no light came on with that name at all.
Does it mean Russian dog?
If you say so.
I mean, I just did a quick Google search, and it comes up meaning like Russian dog or something like that.
Does it? Shit. Yeah, you know what? It's been so long. You know, some of these things I've had to really regress and try to remember what the hell I was doing.
Right.
Everything was a blur. You're just running. You know. Okay. So but anyway.
Yeah. There.
You know, we were wrestling after we'd won the U.S. titles in WCW. We had to fly out while we were wrestling in the Forum, and it was me and Curtis against Arn and Larry Zbyszko for the World Tag Team titles.
Okay.
In the Forum. Yeah. And,
gotcha.
And I was visiting my mom and dad who lived out there at the time, and I didn't realize how full circle from regional stuff to national stuff had gotten on television because I'm so busy doing my thing. And so I'm sitting in a mall in Santa Anita Mall in West Covina, California, and my mom is shopping, and I'm just sitting there, and the kid walks by me, and I had sweats on in a baseball cap, and I'm just kind of sitting there waiting on her, and I'm sitting there and just looking because didn't have cell phones back then, so I'm just watching people, and the kid walks by me and stares at me, and I just kind of look down, and he walks by me again, walks by me one more time. Then he comes over. He was probably 13 years old. He goes, "You're Todd Champion, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "You're wrestling in the Forum tomorrow night, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, can I have my autograph?" I said, "Absolutely." So at that point, I realized that television had reached the West Coast as far as wrestling goes.
Okay.
And because I remember we were there a few days early, and I was down at Venice Beach working out at Gold's Gym down there. And we were walking down the beach, me, Curtis, and I can't remember who else was with us. And I heard somebody make a comment while we were walking down the beach. WCW or the WWE must be in town because they're all here at the beach today.
Yeah. That's
so that
pretty
was
cool.
just kind of realizing that television had finally reached the West Coast, and wrestling was, more of a national thing and not a territorial thing or a southern thing or up north thing. Now it's on the West Coast, and it's getting a lot of notoriety. So that's when I knew, cable TV was, growing, and we were being seen, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we kind of wrapping up here. We got a couple more questions, and I've really through this whole conversation. First of all, we definitely thank you for coming on and giving us your story.
No problem.
But one thing that I'm not picking up on, and this was a question I was even thinking I may not ask, but I think I want to. So, are you? And I don't feel like it from your way that you're telling us these stories. Were you upset that you never broke through to the next level at all, to the WWE or anything like that?
Nah, I wasn't, because I knew what I could do, and maybe if they said, "Yeah, we want you to come back," and blah blah blah, but at that point, it didn't matter to me, because after playing football and knowing, being the athlete that I'd been for so many years before wrestling, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, a lot of guys, lament, and I hear, and I'll listen to some of the older guys that just, they cap on, different people, and, well, if you'd have did this right, and it's almost like, you can't be bitter. You chose the business.
No.
Why be bitter about it? You had an opportunity, good, bad, or indifferent. You had an opportunity, and it's just things work out differently for people. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, so, and being, having, I've got a degree in communications and a minor in finance. So that's
definitely something. Yeah, you can tell.
So I always had something to fall back on, and that was one thing my dad taught me early in life. He says, "You're not going to play forever, so you better have a backup plan." And playing pro football and getting hurt and all that really kind of molded me into, nothing lasts forever. If you can get a run out of it, a good long run, and make a decent living out of it, that's great. Good job. Good for you. Good for me. Good for everybody. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to be happy with yourself. And then, I listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of guys, and some of them are bitter.
Oh,
Those guys are bitter.
Yeah.
And but it's a business, and I'm in the business world, and you can't be bitter because it's business. And so I've learned that lesson, early in life. And so I was never bitter. Would it have been kind of fun to go up there? Absolutely. but I didn't want to be one of those one and done guys.
Right.
They give me a gimmick. I get out there, and for 2 years, I'm whatever gimmick they give me, and then 2 years later, no one knows where I'm at.
Right.
And nobody cares. So at the end of the day, didn't bother me at all. You're. I think a lot of guys, that's their identity. That's all they have. And it's hard on some of the older guys that's their identity. And there's more to life than just being a wrestler. I know that we have families and kids, and being a good dad, a good father, a good husband, a good human being in general. That's where it's really important. That's what's important in life. And taking care of the people around you. That's the important thing. So now I'm not bitter or upset or nothing. I just have a lot of great memories and a lot of good stories, and some stuff I can remember and some stuff I can't. Maybe the stuff I can't's good, but anyway, I don't have any remorse or I'm mad about anything at all.
Gotcha.
I was just happy to be a part at that point in time of the wrestling business. That was really, because we were kind of on the cusp. It was regional, and it was a southern thing, and then maybe a northern thing, East Coast thing, and then all of a sudden I come in and it's starting to take off. So I benefited from that momentum and from television and from all those other things. I benefited from it, and I saved my money, and someday I'll retire. If my kids will ever quit asking me for money, maybe I'll retire. But at the end of the day, no, it was a great experience. I don't have a bad thing to say about anybody. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you, because it's just no sense in hanging on to that stuff. I mean, it was a great time, great stories, great characters, great personalities. It's some things that no one can ever take away from me. So I'm grateful for all that.
That's cool. That's a great perspective. And honestly, that should be a whole class. Honestly, maybe there should be they've got this performance center down in Orlando, the WWE. It sounds like maybe you should teach a perspective class to some of those.
Ask me, I do it, because I think a lot of guys come in not physically prepared to save their money and
mentally
invest it the right way. And not take the whole paycheck and blow it over the weekend and then have to wrestle next week because you got to pay your bills. I was just the opposite. I saved everything.
That's good.
I was cheap. El Cheapo.
Yeah.
That would be my new gimmick. El Cheapo. But,
I love it. But, your final run. I've learned a lot. I'm not perfect, made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, even in the NFL now, they have financial planners that come in and say, okay, you didn't make any money. Well, now they're making money in college. But when I played, man, some guys didn't have $10 to last them all month to live on. Right.
Other than the training table, that was free. And they lived in the football dorms. That was free. But they had $10 cash on the whole time. Man. And you come from that, and all of a sudden you're a multi-millionaire. Now you got tons of friends.
Right.
You got everybody's got their hand out, and you want to be. It feels good to be able to help people, but you also got to know you got to help yourself and help your family.
Right.
And that's where a lot of guys in the NFL made mistakes, and even in the wrestlers that had made tons of money and don't have anything to show for it. Because it just nobody educated them on, hey, if you make this much money, you need to live on this and put this away and invest this and do that. Your money grows with compound interest and stuff like that. They didn't teach any of that stuff to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's what my dad taught me early in life. So that's why I was such a cheapskate.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, our dad pushed the same fiscal conservative thoughts on us. You got to, and you talk about him throughout the whole show, and I love it. Ric Flair's my favorite of all time, no question. Rick spent $10 million and made $5 million. You know what I mean?
Right. So, absolutely.
And
absolutely, he did.
Maybe that's why he's still having to do. And I'm never going to say anything bad of Ric Flair. He could smack me in the face, and I would be like, "Thank you, sir." But when it comes down to it, it's like maybe he could have also took some of that advice. But maybe that's not the nature.
He talks about that. He said in one of his interviews that he was in trouble with the IRS, and Vince bailed him out.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think at that point he learned, Ric Flair lived his gimmick in the ring and outside the ring.
Right.
But I think you get caught up in that image, and it's hard to get out of it. Once you get rolling, it's hard to get out of it. I was with him for one night, and there's no way I could spend money or keep up with him. I watched him pull out a roll of money out of his pocket, and it was like water, just up here.
Right.
Oh yeah, drinks for everybody, drinks for the world, you know. And over time, you know, like he said, you got to have some guidance, and you know, the guys today I think do have that, or I'd hope they do, and because they're making a lot more money than we did.
Right.
So I'm hoping that they've got some fiscal accountability.
Yeah.
And some good accountants that will help them, you know, because I had to do my own taxes, you know, because, you know, I had to write off all that stuff, and I had to sit down and keep a log, which was a pain in the butt. But, you know, so I could write this stuff off, knew what I could write off, knew what I couldn't write off. My agent told me that I needed to, because at the time, when we signed our contracts, I negotiated my contract and Curtis's contract. I negotiated both our contracts. And at the time, I was paying my taxes quarterly, and I was paying so much in taxes. I looked at my account and said, this is crazy.
Right.
I mean, this is crazy. What I need to do, he goes, go buy some land and write it off. Really? Okay. So I went and bought a house in Lawrenceville and some property, and that was, other than the tax breaks I got for traveling and my outfits and all that stuff that I could write off. That's where I learned I got to figure this out quick, or the government's going to get half of it, and eventually the ex-wife may get the other half. So I got to figure it out.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know? So that's when I started thinking, you know, and I never cashed my checks. I made deposits, and I saw guys get their checks in WCW, and they were big checks. And that first thing they'd go to the bank and cash some things and have a big wad of money in their pocket. Nothing in the bank.
Yeah.
But that's just, you know, like I said, nothing lasts forever. And in the back of my head, I'm going, if I get hurt tomorrow, I'm done. I better have some money in the bank.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So,
but maybe that perspective from football taught you that too, because you knew, hey, look, I reached my dream, honestly. And, you know, maybe getting hurt and losing everything in football taught you that, hey, it's not going to last forever. But maybe you already had that perspective, you know. So.
Yeah, I had that perspective, but I was, you know, 10 feet tall and bulletproof and in my early 20s. So,
right.
You know, at that time, nothing hurt. I could power through any injury and play. I played with broken hands and ribs and, you know, all kinds of stuff I played through. Now they go sit out for 2 weeks or a week.
Right. Exactly.
I've had 4 or 5 concussions that I know of.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody today, my first college start was against Kentucky on ESPN when I was in college. I was a sophomore. And I had a Mustang in high school, and my dad took my car away from me when I went to college.
Okay.
And he looked at me. He says, "When you start your first game, I'll get you another car."
Okay.
So I walked the first year in Utah to practice, to lunch, to dinner, to classes, and I had to earn my way back into getting a car.
Yeah.
And my first college start was against Kentucky on ESPN, and I told my dad, "Hey, watch ESPN," because you know we didn't have the internet and all that. Just watch ESPN. It'll be on kickoffs at noon. And he saw it, and he kept his word. I got a 5-speed Audi, a little yellow, looked like a taxi cab, but man, I was so happy I had a car again. But just little things like that, earning your way through life, and thinking about long term and not short term. A lot of guys live on short term. Well, you know, it's great to live week by week, but what about next year? What about the next 6 years? What about the next 10? What about the next 20?
Yeah.
Where are you going to be?
Right.
You know,
man, I think that's the lesson of this episode right now is, you know, perspective and realism.
It is.
You know, that's so,
it is.
Yeah,
it is.
I love it, man. I'm a realist too. So,
well, you know, you got to be, man. I mean, this day and age. That's why if I could tell young wrestlers, I would say, you know, be smart and be smart with your money. And even if you're not making big money right now, whatever money you're making, save what you can.
Right.
Live off what you can, and then just keep working through it. And if you get to the next level or get a contract, like I was fortunate enough to get guaranteed contracts, if you're fortunate enough to get something like that, then live even cheaper.
Yeah.
Because at the end of your contract, you don't know if they're going to renew it or not anyway.
Right.
So, you know, just save your money and be smart and have some fun while you're at it.
Yeah, as much as you can, but also keep money in your bank. So we always wrap up every show with the final question from the Plastic Sheik. Go ahead, Sheik.
All right, so this is going to be, I imagine it's going to be a tough question with as many matches as you've had and opponents you've had. But like, give me some of your like favorite matches you ever had and favorite opponents.
Favorite matches, favorite opponents. There's a bunch of them, but okay. Probably. This is going to blow your mind. I'm going to tell you right now. My first match with the Golden Terror on television.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
That was when I knew, okay, this is how it works. Yeah. That was one of them. Probably Ric Flair, when I did that TV title match with him. Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, when we had a tag match against them, me and Curtis.
Awesome. Those were like your first opponents, really, with them. There was like your first run was Arn and Larry, right?
Yeah. And probably, let's see, and probably going to Japan, working with Terry Gordy and working with the Japanese guys.
Man, that's awesome stuff, man. That's some all time names and places to have been and people to have worked. So.
Yeah, I mean, you only get better with working with the best, right? So I knew if I was wrestling with Arn or Larry or Rick or even Tully Blanchard, I had match with Tully too. One of early in my career.
Yeah,
and guys like that. When you wrestle those guys, then you understand how the business works and how to be a professional and how to do your deal, and that's where you learn. That's where you learn. It's repetition, right? It's the more you do it, the better you get. And
exactly.
It's just like playing in the NFL. You know, Jordan Love, who's a quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, is a Utah State grad.
Yeah. Okay.
That was drafted in the first round, and he sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, and he's lighting it up now.
Mm-hmm.
But he had to be patient and learn, and repetition. And in his first couple of games, he's a little shaky because you're in the NFL. It's a lot different, and all of a sudden, it's like a light switches on, and now look at him now. Now all the naysayers are going, man, he is the real deal.
Yeah, and I think that's so good for getting to NFL for a second. I think it's so overrated to bring a quarterback in and start them their rookie year. I mean,
well, they were talking about that today on pardon the interruption on ESPN, and they were talking about how Green Bay has figured that out, where none of the other NFL teams have, where they'll draft a guy first round, throw him out there right away, and it's feast or famine for him. And Green Bay doesn't do it that way. They'll get a quarterback, and they know what he's got, and they'll sit him for the Brett Favre sat for 3 years.
Sit him 3 or 4 years.
And then now Jordan Love sat for 3 years, and now look, and he's doing everything he did at Utah State, but at a higher level.
Yeah.
And we were the only school that recruited him.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
There's talent out there if you know where to look.
Yeah. Well, my team right now, I'm a huge Titans fan. Of course, I lived in Nashville for a long time, and that's when I became a huge Titans fan. And, to me, that's what the Titans can't figure out. I wish that Tannehill could have kept it going long enough that Levis could have got a couple years behind him, and then he comes out. But it felt, they kind of said, okay, Tannehill, let's go with Levis, and let's see where we're at. Now we're going to probably lose Derek King. It's a mess, but anyway.
It's like Russell Wilson going to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look what's happened to him. I mean, his career's just spiraled, out of control. And, and Russell's a great. It just sometimes you get a staff, or you don't have the right people around you, to develop, and that's what Green Bay's so good at developing their quarterbacks. They've got it figured out, where the rest of the league kind of, hasn't got it figured out yet. So only time will tell. Right now, Jordan's really doing good. I'm happy for him, and he's a Utah State kid, and so that gets me a little more interested in the Packers, even though I'm always watching football.
Right.
My girlfriend told me, she just told me the other day, she says, I'm nothing but a football widow. All you do is watch football all day.
Well, that's what my wife says about wrestling. So, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I love college, football. Like I said, I go up to Utah State every year. I'll go to the spring game, and I pile around with the coaches a little bit, have some fun, and it's nice to get back to the alma mater and get to talk to the team and just fun stuff like that.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. I don't know that I'm a Virginia Tech Hokie fan, and I don't know if we'll ever, but.
Well, I lived in Virginia for 2 years. I lived in Roanoke.
Oh, yeah. Great area. Roanoke is the capital of Southwest Virginia, is what we say. So
is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. Roanoke's a great city, Star City. But the Hokies, to me, they're in the ACC. I feel like there's this push for them to want to be a basketball school, and I just feel like their focus isn't as much on football as it, and it's like if you get behind 1 year in recruiting, it can throw you so far behind. It can take years to catch up, So
well, this transfer portal thing's gotten out of hand too.
Oh, it's brutal. I was going to ask you, what do you think of that, man?
I don't like it. It's okay. NIL deals and stuff, the kids, like I said, we didn't have that kind of money back then. They didn't pay us for our images. They just used it and make money.
Right.
But, and I'm okay with that part. But the part I don't like is these kids being able to jump ship anytime they feel like they're not getting a fair shake, or it just teaches them they're not going to work for anything. They want to find a spot and start right away and have no competition. And it takes away from the collegiate aspect of it. So I'm hoping, and they are working on this now, to figure out you can't transfer before bowl games, or you got to wait till January to do anything.
Yeah.
So
I hope that's the case. Yeah.
I do too, because, you saw what happened to Florida State and Georgia, right?
Right. It's brutal, man. Yeah.
It was brutal because half their guys, the guys that they were, star players, were sitting out, or they were transferring or whatever. And so you're throwing
most of their starting defense was
and they're throwing their kids in against Georgia, who just they just ran all over because their starters weren't playing.
Right.
And it's like we would always go up against the scout team during practice, and they were the freshmen, and they just beat the dog poop out of them because they're freshmen.
Right.
And I think that's what happened when Florida State got there. Is they their guys realized they weren't playing for a national championship, so they said, the heck with that, I'm just going to sit this one out.
Yeah.
See if I get drafted. So they got to change it. Or, and then I heard today Nick Saban's retiring. So
I saw that. Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
How that's going to affect Alabama,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see. But, man, Todd, it's been amazing having you on. Thank you so much for just sharing everything with us and being so open and just willing to tell your story, man. It's been an honor to have you on. It's
a lot of fun to kind of bring back the memories and talk about stuff. I'm sure I forgot. I took notes, and I didn't say nothing on my notepad.
Oh, okay. Well, that's part 2.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and like I said, I don't regret anything. I don't regret any decisions I made. And I just hope the young guys out there, if they're listening to this podcast, just work hard at whatever you're doing. I don't care what it is, and just give it 100%, and that's all you can do. And then let the chips fall where they may. And then at the end of the day, if you didn't get the result you wanted, that's okay too, because you did it the best of your ability, and that's what matters.
Yeah, there you go. No better way to end it than that. Thank you, sir, so much. And yeah, we'll get you back for part 2, and you can tell all your notes. I promise. We're sorry we took over the conversation.
I got a ton of notes here that I didn't use. We'll do it next time.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much, and we'll.
Yeah, it was a pleasure chatting with you guys. Have a great evening.
All right, you too, sir. We'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Shane from Insane Shane's World. I release wrestling figures of enhancement talent, mid-card wrestlers, and wrestlers that you never thought would have a figure available. So if you are interested in adding a really cool and rare figure to your collection, then don't hesitate to contact me at shamtheman73@gmail.com. That's SHAMtheman73@gmail.com. You can also join my Facebook group. Just search Insane Shane's World.
This is your rock star ring announcer, Aaron Camaro. I'm a man who believes the two greatest art forms ever created are professional wrestling and heavy rock music. So when I'm not hosting the best parties that also happen to be live professional wrestling shows, I'm hosting the Decibel Geek Podcast. Decibel Geek is a weekly podcast that features discussions of all things rock. We're talking the Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, Kiss, Ozzy, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Alice in Chains, Pantera, and everything in between. Plus, we'll turn you on to new bands from today that have the same spirit and style that the legends do. Decibel Geek is hosted by myself along with Rockin' Pod founder Chris Sinzak, and each week you'll get interviews with famous musicians and industry insiders, along with informative, entertaining, humorous, and insightful discussions, and most importantly, a passion for the music. So if you love to rock out as much as I do, then this is your invitation to the greatest rock and roll party in all of podcasting. It's Decibel Geek, and it's available right now on all major podcast platforms. Oh yeah!
Oh, Sheik, what did I say, man? That's another one in the books. Todd Champion is the man.
Man, he gave us stories. We had our questions to ask, and sometimes he would answer them before we asked them. So it's awesome when you get that conversation going that smoothly that it just flows right into one subject to the next. I loved hearing about his football days from Utah State to the NFL to, and then his transition to wrestling, man. It was awesome to hear.
Yeah, it really was. I knew you would enjoy that college and pro stuff. I knew you would enjoy that pro football talk. Yeah. It's always cool. So
yeah, it's good to see that. But he looks like an athlete too. When you look at him, and you see him. Not that other people we've talked to don't look like athletes, but when you see him, you're like, oh, he takes it serious. As far as he still takes it serious from seeing pictures of him. So
yeah, you can tell he's an athlete just by looking at him for sure. And like I said, I've said it many times, if you drew a pro wrestler, that guy would be one of the guys you would draw for sure. He's just got that look about him. And man, just have these past few shows before having him on, we heard his name brought up so many times. It's like, man, it was a natural to get him on the show. So hopefully maybe we can get Firebreaker Chip on soon too. So see what
that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah, maybe down the line here, but we got some cool stuff coming up. The next episode I'm very excited about. This one is called A Tribute to TJ Weatherby. This is TJ's birthday coming up. Not exactly sure which day, how old he would be, but we're going to bring Kevin Weatherby and Kroll on, maybe some other guests. I don't know, but anyway, we're going to have a good time talking about my old buddy and a guy who meant a lot to me when I did a little bit in the wrestling business, Mr. TJ Weatherby. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah, and we're going to have George Weingroff, Jamie Dundee. We're going to have many more guests up in the future. But the very next one, we're going to do that tribute to TJ Weatherby, and I'm very excited about it. So,
can we survive Jamie Dundee?
We're going to try. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. If he says, if we can pin him down, I think it'll be a great show for sure. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I did notice, so obviously I always keep an eye on the rankings of the top 200 in, wrestling podcasts and stuff like that. And one thing I noticed that popped up as a new podcast, and I got to think, maybe we had a little something to help them with this, but is Greg and Magnum. It's a new podcast. I swear. Greg Gagne and Magnum TA have made a podcast, and it looks like it's got some Power Town element to it. I don't know if y'all are into the Power Town line. I would probably recommend that podcast. I haven't checked it out yet, but you've heard Greg and Magnum on our show, so I would imagine it'll be a very entertaining. Plus, those two guys together, you got great stories. So again, I have not listened to it yet, but I do plan on checking it out. Just because, man, those guys are former guests of our show. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I hadn't heard about it myself, but it should be interesting to hear. And, I'm always interested if they're keeping up some of the talk with Power Town. Maybe they'll give some updates a little more regular and everything like that.
Yeah, I saw the Missing Link figure video they put out.
Look good.
Have you seen Bobo Brazil yet, too?
I have not seen Bobo. I must have missed it.
Yeah, it looks good. Missing Link, man, that guy's just a natural Remco style figure.
Oh yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. I do like that it is Remco inspired, but it's also that modern He-Man, style too, with more, what do they call that? More movement, more.
Yeah, a little more movement, a little more
articulation.
There you go.
Yeah. But anyway, if you haven't, go check out that podcast. If you haven't, go check out our podcast. I don't know how you landed on this one other than if you're just a Todd Champion fan, which who blames you for that? But anyway, very fun talking with him, very fun doing this show. And I had a good time, man. Very, very fun.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. It's always good to talk to a guy that's had so much history in the business. And, it's people like him that, were the carpenters that helped this business survive all those years. So,
yeah, I agree. Well, before we wrap things up, the Royal Rumble's coming up, Jared. I don't, know who you're picking for the Royal Rumble victory, but who do you have in your mind?
Oh, man. I hope it's not The Rock, to be honest with you. He doesn't need to win it to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Right. He wants to. Punk makes some sense, but Punk doesn't really need it to be a main event player either.
Right.
But I guess I would have to go. I guess Punk's probably the favorite. If you're looking for like a wild card guy, LA Knight or something like that could win it. And
yeah.
But he's in another match. I'm not sure if he's actually in the Rumble or not.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I don't know, man. There seems to be a lot of players there for just the two belts, the two big belts at least. So
yeah.
They might even have Gunther win it.
Well, that would be out of normal. Yeah, for sure. That would be different. I think I'm picking Cody, so I'm going to go with that.
Back to back, huh? Stone Cold. Only back to back, I think, isn't he?
Finish the story. I think that's what's going to happen, but we'll see. Who knows? But anyway, I don't know. The Rock coming back and challenging somewhat, Roman Reigns. I don't know. Maybe Cody takes it from him. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Roman has to wrestle twice at WrestleMania. Who knows? But
they may do Saturday and Sunday. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? But I do know this. It'll be fun. You and I always enjoy the Royal Rumble, so
Little Sheik loves the Royal Rumble as much as we do too. He loves it. He wants to watch all the old ones and stuff like that. So
yeah, very cool. Raising them right, Sheik. Raising them right. Well, thank you all so much for listening today. I think that's all we got for this one. Once again, we want to thank Todd Champion so much for coming on and telling his story with us. And thank you all for checking us out, listening to us. If this is your first one or your 52nd one or whatever you've done, we thank you so much for coming along on this ride with us. Once again, to keep informed on all the happenings, go to @GMBMPW on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, @GMBMPW. You'll find out everything you need to know about what's going to go on, what's happening, what's happened already, and get the links to all the shows. Check us out. We thank you all so much for that. Sheik, I got nothing else. You got anything before we leave?
I don't think so, man. I just appreciate Todd being on to talk to us and looking forward to the next one.
Amen. I like it. Sounds great to me. Well, if that's all you got, that's all I got. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. We'll see y'all next time on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget,
fight forever.
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life.
We'll see you later.
This has been a James Rock Street production.